Hey there guys, here's a quick breakdown of Vivian's swing. Uh, Here's the first swing. This is the one we could sort of say the biggest change was the changes in posture. We'll start from the takeaway to the transition. Based on this example here, we say that this is a pretty inefficient takeaway. It looks like her shoulders are turning even forward, a little dip beforehand before starting to turn back, and she still has that little like a signature sort of bob in there. However, once we get to this line here, which is transition, she's very efficient. The lines rise up very quickly, which is a good marker of acceleration, and they also decelerate fairly fast as well. The hip does shoulders do a pretty good job, and hips are also pretty good as well. The hips have a little bob, so that tells us she's probably trying to time a few things. As well, her hips are more or less traveling the same speed, but have a little bump in the opposite direction prior to starting. So this little dip here, or this little rise here with this little rise here, is indicative of that little tiny signature bob that she's got. We look at the transition sequence. This has been really quite stable. With the tall posture, she tends to start the downswing entirely with the hands, then she goes hips, and then she goes shoulders. The peak speed is when does each segment tap out in terms of speed first, is maximal point of acceleration. So the hips peak first, shoulders peak second, hands peak third. That's a really good marker of like an efficient downswing. So we really like that. And this is also pretty consistent with the speeds that she was getting for the hips, shoulders, and hands. So what we'll see in the next graph is that she's more or less like 100 degrees faster when she tips over and gets into a better posture to dress. I think the big cue is turning the abs on. When we scroll down, her alignment looks good, but the upper body bend, Vivian struggles to get more than 36 degrees and still kind of borders on that. The pelvic bend's good, but when she starts to tip over more, we're going to find that she still needs to flatten that low back more, and hopefully we can keep it within 25 to 20 or so. Up at the top, we'd sort of say, well, she really doesn't turn her hips all that much. We'd like to see far more hip turn, and the side bend too. This means that her hip was too high in this circumstance. So this all sort of cleared up in the next one. But the main thing was with the summary, we found that the amount of turn was limited, upper body turn slightly limited, but that'll fix itself once we start from the ground up and start to fix those few changes. Let's go to the best one. So this was probably one of the best swing captures that we have. We can see how much more efficient her takeaway is. Before we'd sort of say it's very inefficient. Now it's quite good. The shoulders seem to start a little bit, like almost with an acceleration. We'd like to sort of see them drop right down with the hands right away. So sort of, I think Paul's talked a lot about trying to connect the hands to the shoulders. Paul, yeah, that's exactly what we're seeing right here. More connection to the hands means this brown and green line are going to ride together and then stretch apart, versus the shoulders and hips riding together and then stretching apart. We can see she's still got this little bob, but it really does minimize some of this extra movement of the hips. And we can see that the rise of acceleration is better for both the hips and shoulders as well. Her speeds are about 100 degrees faster across the board, and she has the right transition or right downswing sequence, and she's the right peak speed sequence as well. Scrolling down to her alignment, so this sort of tipping over left her slightly a bit more open. Her upper body bend is good. Her pelvic bend at address means she needs to flatten her low back more. So that was something we picked up. She started 25 with her previous tall swing, and now she needs to tip over at least another 5 degrees. So we saw that she still could turn her hips further, but from the standpoint of like the modern golf swing, which is a really restricted hip turn, that's fantastic. That more restricted hip turn generally means a bit more accuracy. So you guys can choose what you think is best. Pelvis turn, the top impact turn, she's figured out exactly where her hip should be stopping relative to being opened or closed at impact. Pelvis movement, all looks really good. We like all these green numbers. We just need to, again, fix how much she tips over at address. Upper body movement here too. Impact, we'd like to see her shoulders become a little bit more level, as well as the upper body bend. She could tip over a little bit more, but those are a few degrees out. We're not going to really focus on these things at all in terms of where you might go with the instruction. I think just the watching the low back, and then something to help the connect the hands to the body a bit more. Sequence looks really good. All these other numbers look excellent. So I think the take home, first thing we want to do is get her to really work on making sure that the glutes are on and the low back is flat. At the top of the swing, address, and at impact, she seems to have had that all cleared up. That should fix most of the things. And Paul, whatever work you want to give her to help sequence or connecting the hands to the body, that'd be perfect. We'd sort of see the last little bit of cleanup from the standpoint of efficiency take place in the backswing. Hope that helps.